Hello, my name is Bob Hall. I live in Weed, California. I'm a member of the City Council. I gave a report last week regarding a cultural inventory, and I felt that it's necessary for me to follow up on it and try to uh, influence as many people as I can to come to our meeting on January 20th at the City Hall Chamber Room. First of all, I want you to please give me some space. I have to use my notes here. I don't want to get lost. I have some very important things I want to pass on. First of all, I came to what I'm going to speak about today is culture. And when I talk about culture, I'm talking about actually trying to envision what a culture is. A culture is let's say a petri dish, and we're going to create something to grow. So, and a good analogy is just yeast. Put some yeast in some water, and it doesn't necessarily grow. You have to feed this yeast for it to grow. But once the culture is growing, it grows and it expands, and it does it naturally. And that's what a culture is to me. But the second part is to find a way to take an inventory, a community inventory. And to do that, I have to explain. I'll explain some of experiences I have with inventories, and also the responsibility of being a community member. A lot of us have forgotten. I and myself are one of them. I came back in the later part of my life here to understand my responsibility. But the fourth thing is to find ways to take action to influence our community / culture. So, and when we talk about culture, let's understand that we can't control it. It's not directed. It's something that we can influence, but we can't control it. But to influence, it takes understanding and discipline and grace. It takes understanding of what being a human really is. So I want to start with my own inventory, and I find it very important to do this because of the inventory process, the things I found in my inventory. And I was born and raised in McLeod, and like everybody, I had character flaws, but my character flaws were a little different than a lot of people's. Basically, I did things that I could get away with. The thrill of getting away with things, with doing things that I wasn't supposed to do, was thrilling. I can't put it any other way. I got caught up in that. When I was 14 years old, I would be in front of a mirror, looking into my eyes, making eye contact, practicing to lie. Practicing to lie. That was me. Somehow I drifted off into that thing, that being that way. And by the time I was 15 or 16, alcohol came into my life. And once that happened, the pimples fell off my face and I could dance. But I also could forget about other things I was doing or the responsibility of doing them. So I had problems with the law somewhat. Again, my reality was I've been to juvenile hall a couple times, and I went to jail once at 18. And what that taught me basically was don't do things you can get caught at. And it was kind of how I lived, not getting caught, but doing little things I could get away with. And when I was 18, I met my wife, Mary, and she's just good. She anchored me to good. I tried to be good, but I still really didn't understand what it would take to do that. So I continued. I went into I was in trouble with the law at 18, and I'd been sent to jail for the first time, and I didn't like that. There was some experiences there that horrifying. But I was in there two and a half days. But the reality is that I had to go back to McLeod to go to court one evening Bud Taylor came and picked me up. He was the deputy sheriff. Picked me up, took me to McLeod, and we went to the judge's chamber right there on Quincy Street, and Judge Hanson was there, and my parents were there, and it was kind of a thing where what the judge ended up telling me is, Bobby, you've been in a lot of trouble. I think you need to grow up. Have you thought about the military? And I said, yeah, I had thought about the military. The Vietnam War this is 1967. And I had some strange, silly illusion that I wanted to get to the war to see how I behave in the war, in the big game. And because I grew up playing, I was born in 49, so we grew up playing Army, shooting at Germans and Japanese, and just that type of thing was ingrained into me and most of the people that I knew. So what ended up happening is I went stationed at Fort Ord, and I never made it to Vietnam. It haunted me for a lot of years, and even after, hundreds of Vietnam vets that I talked to afterwards would tell me, Bobby, you're lucky. You don't even think about not. But there was something that I wasn't right, and it was come to find out there was a lot that wasn't right with me. So stationed in Fort Ord, and I ended up getting married, and I was a father at 19. And this went on. I went into the Army, drank and partied, did my thing, came back through the 70s and 80s, drinking and partying and having a good time, a lot of good times. And still, there was some character defects that I still wasn't aware of. But as it ended up, I was 38 years old and very suicidal. I remember one night I was up in my bedroom contemplating killing myself, basically. And I was in drunk stupor. I had a beautiful wife and 2 children downstairs. I had a car. I owned my house. Had everything, but I was at the end. And the main reason I didn't do it is a friend of mine had done it about a year before this. And the devastation, he left with his family, and I helped with the family. And it was terrible. I had a realization that I wasn't really going to get out of things. And to be honest with you, I think that the thing was just a matter of a way of me feeling sorry for myself, and poor me. If anybody knew how horrible I really felt. Well, just so happened that a good buddy of mine had gotten into trouble. He worked for the SP, and he got in trouble regarding alcohol and drugs, and he went to rehab. He came back, and he was having a hard. He was required to go to a 12-step program so many times a week, and I thought to myself, well, I'll go with him. I don't think I could be an alcoholic, but I'll go with him because I wasn't afraid to go into a meeting. And we went to the meetings, and there I ran into some wonderful, wonderful people. And my point there is that these people seem to be so intelligent, because at this point I thought I was the most intelligent person. I was, my arrogance had me on a pedestal. But the program, 12-step program, was based on, first of all, finding a power greater than myself. And so I liked it. I kept going back to the meetings, and I started learning, and I got a sponsor. And my sponsor taught me some things. The first thing he taught me was to take the cotton out of my ears and put it in my mouth. That sounds simple, but it really is for me, it was difficult, because I had been manipulating all my life, covering my tracks, always covering my tracks. I had no freedom when it came to that. It was always about covering up my past. And my first sponsor also, one of the first epiphanies I had to understand that he taught me was to start to do something for somebody without that recognition, without needing the recognition. So my first experience with that was there was a snowstorm, and I went out at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I went and shoveled out neighbors. And I never told them I did it. The people would wonder, and I do it a few times through snowstorms. I did this 3 or 4 times, but I started understanding that this idea of giving something meant so much more than getting something and getting the recognition, needing that recognition for what I did. So that was the beginning, and the program was also based on having a power greater than myself. And I came to understand that this group was more powerful than myself. I trusted them more. It actually came to be that the understanding the group conscience, what the group conscience was, and to live by the group conscience, not just my way, my agenda, but through the inventory. The 4th step is to take a moral inventory of yourself, and it's quite a process. Through this, I learned a lot of things about myself, but I also started meeting with some men that we met for about 2 years, writing inventories, and then sharing that inventory with people. And it was just amazing how the layers of the onion started coming off, and I started getting to a place where I could take the responsibility of where I'd been, what I'd done. And I had to go make amends to the people that I had harmed, and the other stuff. But the main thing was the inventory. Through this inventory, sharing with these men, I found that I didn't know anything about myself. I had no idea what integrity was, gratitude, honesty. I'd been married for 20 years and really didn't understand that my wife loved me. When it came to my family, I'd actually taken them hostage. And it was strange when I say hostage, it's not with guns or anything, but I'm talking about, what they did affected me or made me what I look like, or in just, it's hard to explain, but it was kind of a hostage situation. So, and one of my sponsors later on, Everett taught me about increments. And he says, these things are going to come into your life. Things that used to baffle you are going to come into your life in increments. You're not going to get this gigantic, this explosion that I understand. I've got it now, which I'd always thought, well, that would be, when it comes to spirituality, you have it, you don't have it. But my point there is that this process took me into places that I'd never been. And it taught me that even at 40 years old, I wasn't really, at this time, still wasn't cash register honest. I could justify anything. And that's the key to my inventory, is that I came to realization that I have to really be careful about justifying, because I could justify anything. I've done some really bad things. I've never killed anybody, but had done some deceitful things to people, and always manipulating. It was always a manipulation, and always an ego-centered thing where I'm explaining who I wanted people to think I was something more than I was. The point here, what I'm getting to now, is that I'm 72 years old. I'm an old man. These increments have come to me slowly over the years. There's no way that I could even think about speaking to you in these terms even 5 years ago. They're coming to me, but I'm an old man. I'm 72 years old, and I'm here to try to influence you, and hopefully you can influence others to understand what the value of an inventory and the value of getting honest. So now we take an inventory of weed. I got out of the Army in 1970. Came back to weed. At that time, a lot of vets were coming back, and I mentioned that the 58,000 didn't come back, but we were coming back, and we had the discipline of military, which helped. And not only that, we were boomers. So right after the Second World War, there was still a lot of influence and organization and discipline from the military. But what Weed was like at that time during the 70s and 80s was that we had your neighbors. There wasn't a Shastina yet. Your neighbors could have been a college professor, a high school teacher, a lawyer, whatever. People just lived in the houses that we had in Weed. Very few new houses existed. It was still somewhat a company town. The socially at that time, during those times, there was things like the Lions Club. The Lions Club had a morning group that met and an evening group that met. The Kiwanis were meeting. The Rotary was meeting. The Knights of Columbus were meeting. At that time in 1982, we had 11 men's softball teams in Weed. 11 men's softball team and some, I think 4 or 5 women's softball teams. Our Little League teams had 6 teams in each division. We was happening. But as the story goes, in August of 1982, International Paper, who was the main employer at that time, left. They closed the doors. They immediately we lost 750 jobs, union scale jobs. Now, not everybody lived in Weed, but most. That was a body blow to our community. And following up from those times, people were scattering. People were trying to survive, and people were moving to Shastina. People were moving to work elsewhere, and things just became a little more. But let's put it in 1984, we had 2 softball teams by that time, and our community was just kind of floating along without any direction. And I want to go back up to during those days before the International Paper closed, you go at churches on Sunday, churches were full. There was Boy Scouts. There was all kind of little things that dealt with morality, not little things, influences. They're not little things. They're serious influences. But these things are these influences were basically not very inspiring at that time. We were struggling. A lot of people moved and sold their houses, or a lot of people moved and rented their houses out. And as in 19 and that brings us into 1984, 1985, things changed nationally at that time, and I feel kind of clumsy bringing it up, but it really was what happened. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers started, and before you knew it, the courts and the lawyers found that there was you could place a price tag on drunk drivers, and that became it changed from giving you a ride home because you shouldn't be driving. The policeman had to arrest you, and it became a $6,000 to $10,000 event. And it also changed things where it became, if I was at your house having a few drinks and I went out and got in an accident, they could sue me and they could sue you. So people stopped gathering. And this just was a slow process, but we started not mixing it up. A community is about people getting a vision. We all have a perception, but the vision when we start mixing it up, it kind of purifies. When you might hear something about me, I might hear something about you, but then as a group I talk about something was said, and then another piece of the puzzle comes. Oh, I can understand what they were saying about him. It wasn't that he was really this awful, but it was even bigger than that. It's not out of the personal became the community itself. The community stopped being able to clean itself, purify itself. And this is not only in Weed, this is nationally. So we became more at home. People had to start staying at home. We aren't gathering much. We're not doing the softballs and those things, because we went back to the softball days. There was a tournament every weekend. At a tournament, it was a party. and people got together and partied and had a good time. But that became something that was basically not acceptable any longer. So now we move into 1995. 1995, at this time, the 24-hour news cycle started. And during this time, the different networks were, getting into this. Well, Fox News decided to create Fox News, and they hired a man named Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes was a game show producer, and for most of his career. But he was Rupert Murdoch hired him to be the leader, to lead this Fox News new 24-hour news channel. And he came to what he did is he came to his people that were getting ready to do this news production, and he says, "Who's our audience?" And 2 or 3 people said, "Well, audience is the audience. You're competing with everybody else." He says, "No." He says, "We've got 40% conservative, 60% liberal." He says, "We'll take the 40%. We're going to give them the conservative news. We're going to give them the conservative news." So at that time, we changed. There's no longer news. Now we have conservative news. We have liberal news. And I think the liberals were left with liberal news stations, or supposedly liberal, but they were competing with one another with all the news. But now they're locked into the competition. And what's most important thing to understand about this now is that this was not based on any the word I'm looking for, it wasn't based on anything that was morality or truth. This is based on ratings, based on money. How do we keep these people watching our station? And it kept, the separation began, and it actually got into a point where I believe that it got to a point where people decided they could actually benefit from hate, getting people to start blocking. In other words, hating somebody because of this boogeyman that had been created. The boogeyman was about that they're going to come after my guns. They're coming after my freedoms. They think I'm stupid, and this hate started. And it reversed itself, where it became into a thing where intellectuals are actually stupid. And the process, this process of dividing us, actually third grade mentality, third man out. The news station and me and those other people. They were trying to, their thoughts trying to influence mine became something that I could, that was basically blocked off from, or insulated by fake news. Don't believe that because it's fake news. Don't believe that. Both sides became separated. And what was it about? What was the liberal stations after? What were the conservative station networks after? Ratings. Simple ratings. And now we move into 2008, 2007, 2008. Now the internet becomes prevalent. The internet becomes prevalent, and we've all experienced the thing to be click on something, and before you click on something, and it'll give you something else and give you something else. Well, those are algorithms. Algorithms that keep you online, because the more you stay online, the more advertising income that the network receives, or the internet receives, or whatever part of the network you're using. And those algorithms actually have gotten to the point where it's very possible that the algorithm is writing an algorithm for itself for each and every person to keep you online. The more you stay online, the clock's ticking, and that's about money, ratings. It's not about morality. It's not about truth. It's about ratings. So the these ratings have caused not only have caused, but they've taken and inspired a lot of people through hate. Hate is an emotion. Hate is something that's contagious. When I'm hating with my buddy, when we're hating something, we're capable of anything. We're sharing the same perception of consciousness, which some people say is could be a delusion, but we're sharing the same thing. But the problem now is we don't get together. We don't know how to work together. We're getting our information from these entities that are really based on making money. Simple as that. Not about truth and honesty. So why I talk about this is because hate is something we really need to address. Know what it is. Know what it feels like. Because it inspires people. It connects people. Love can do the same, but it doesn't have nearly we're in the time of when we talk about the spikes on the viruses. Well, hate has spikes, and it can infiltrate. It penetrates, and the thing about it, to keep hate going, we have to have these blocks up to keep our mind closed, to keep focused on what's wrong, the problem's there. The problem's not here. It's not my responsibility. It's over there. They're doing this. So when we get back to weed, taking an inventory, real limited inventory right now. That's what we want to get together on the 20th of January for. But what I'm talking about is taking the responsibility for our communities, taking the responsibility for our cultures, to be able to understand what our community is. One of the terrible facts of our community is, and it's just this way, it's not saying anything bad about anybody, but 70% of our livable wage jobs in weed, and there's 1,500 jobs, they say, in weed. Nearly 70%, and that's my own number. That's what it feels like to me. It may be less, maybe more. But 70% of the livable wage jobs are held by people that do not live in weed city limits. That's just the way it is. People that make the highest paying jobs are held by people that live on the outskirts of weed or even in different communities. So the boundaries of the city are kind of, they really don't mean that much anymore because there's so many different districts and things like that. And I'm speaking to people in weed, but I'm also hopefully speaking to people that just understand this concept and maybe want to help people in weed. And I do want to try to inspire and influence people that work in weed to help out with the culture somewhat. You just can't have all of your teachers not live in your community. You can't have your leaders in these positions need to have an understanding what weed's about. We have the lowest rent in Siskiyou County, and that we have a lot of renters. Now in those renters, I think that when we talk about renters, and it's not all renters, but we have in our community a lot of disenfranchised people. And when I talk about disenfranchised, some of these people have been disenfranchised their entire lives. They've been excluded. They've been excluded. And when people are excluded, what the defense mechanism that comes about is arrogance. Once I have arrogance, I've worked with some very, very bad people. And the common thing that they all have is arrogance. They're better than that. They're somehow, this defense mechanism they built up, and they're blocked. They don't learn much. They stay about the same place. They don't get many breaks. They don't know how to get breaks. Basically, they don't know how to succeed in today's world. And there are ways to influence them. And I think that's what I hope that we can do, is come together and start finding ways to influence our culture, our community. The things that we do have going for us right now is we're going to have a new school built. And when we start talking about disenfranchised people, first of all, they're ours. They're part of our community. This is our community. This is what we have. This is the hand we dealt. We can talk about how things used to be and everything's going to hell in the handbasket, but it's still our responsibility. Our school system is our responsibility. Our city hall is our responsibility. Us, we're in a democracy. Now I want to back up just a bit to my own inventories. When I found this power greater than myself was a group, and after a while, this group, I started understanding that I couldn't just live in this one little stable. I had to live in my community. And my community became my higher power. And for the first time in my life, I'd come to a point where I actually understood the responsibility, the service I had to do to my community. And I say that because I want you to understand many years of my life, I want to be on the city council. I want you to look at me being on the city council. Not that I was going to actually do something. I wanted that notoriety or the title. But that's not what I'm about today. What I'm about today is trying to influence you and my community to grow. Some of the things we have going for us right now are number one thing we have that we've never really went into is diversity. I have a title of Diversity USA, Weed California. That's in my mind. And I think it's real important. And I think when it comes to the thing of races, being diverse races, we have the perfect small community for a community our size regarding. We have blacks, we have whites, we have Italians, we have Hispanics, we have Asians. For a small community, we're there. Our kids coming out of school, our children, young people coming out of our schools, really have very little racial understanding of what the emphasis that a lot of other communities put on it. We're already there. They have a special thing. We haven't really created a vocabulary for it yet, but it exists, believe me. And when we talk about diversity, we're not talking about just races. We're talking about the haves and have-nots. We're talking about different religions. We're talking about gender issues. We're talking about red and blue, Democrat, Republican, the liberal and the white supremacist. They're all us. There's nothing wrong with any of them, except that we don't know how to work together anymore. We want to stay in our own little lanes. But we need to practice to work together. We have to do this. We have to come to terms with, do we really know what's going on? Are we prepared for what's coming? We have in Weed, we have somebody just bought the theater and have plans on a lot of musical things coming through. They're putting a new roof on it, which has been the problem with the theater for many years. They put a new roof, putting money into it. Dos Amigos just sold. What I'm saying there is that people are investing in weed. They see weed being a place to grow. We have Loves coming in. and the many other. If you look at Main Street, we have a new sandwich shops. We have things that are starting to happen. We're dealing with some absentee landlords, which is a real main horrible issue that we've been dealing with for like about 8 years now. But the things that are like for the future are we ready for hemp? Hemp is something that is on the way back. They can build houses out of hemp now. They're actually building blocks that are made out of hemp that last forever. They've made cars out of hemp. I saw an old film of a long time ago, Mr. Ford, back in the 30s, taking a sledgehammer and hitting a hood of a door that was made out of a car door made out of hemp, and it just bounced off. The paint didn't even come off of it. But there's so many things coming that we need to talk about to be prepared for. But the real issue is that we no longer know how to work together. Let's remember how they were in the early 80s and how it's just changed. We don't know how to work together. And we're insulated with this, I know what I know, and I know how to think. We're not at all aware of the information stream that's coming in, how important that is to keep it moderate, to keep it to put stress on togetherness, working together. How do we work together? Well, the first step is to admit that we don't know how to work together. We admit that that's the weakness right in our community right now. We're not working together. The second step is to come to believe that community will make, if we put time into community, things could get better, could be better. The third step is to make a decision, to make an effort to join the community, to be part of the community, not to allow ourselves to think that our community involvement is based on staying home and pointing the finger. You know what's wrong? You know what's wrong? No, we got to understand, what am I doing? What am I doing for the situation? I can't do anything. The fact is that there's just a few people doing things, and they're labeled with, they think they're a big shot. They do everything. No, the reason why there's only a few people doing things, because there's only a few people doing things. That's a reality. Most people like to stand back and be safe. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to get messed up. I'll do a real quick story. We did the downtown area. We put down 45,000 pavers. To do that, we had to learn how to do it. We didn't know how to do it. We put in street lights, Cobra headlights, street lights, and we did this with volunteers. And the city of Weed, they finally came along. The crews were not happy with us in the first place. Matter of fact, I had somebody come to my house and lunch break to tell me that he didn't want me to even think about doing this because the city crew was going to be stuck with it. And they made things difficult for us the first few months. But once they understood that what we were about and that we could walk our talk and we knew how to work, they began to appreciate us a bit more. But we had 120 volunteers during this project. 120. Out of those 125, other than my children who were born here, 5 were born and raised in Weed. So we're talking about 100 out of 120, 115 transplants. These are people that cared enough to come in and help out. Many of a lot of things that I got from people that been here a long time were, what do they think they're doing? Why are they doing that? And what we're trying to do is save downtown. And we actually, with our pavers and our street lights, and if we ever can get the money to resurface Main Street, it's really going to pop then, as far as the potential. We're going to bring it back. We're doing that. But what I want to do right now is, first of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And I hope that you can make the meeting on January 20th at 7 o'clock at the council chambers at the City of Weed. And when we come, I don't know when we come, let's understand, for you to come, it's going to take courage. Courage to break the old patterns, to get involved. The courage to understand that everybody, when we come to this power greater than ourselves, it's community. Community is greater than ourselves. Then there's the spiritual parts, aspects of it higher than that. But right now, it's about humanity and our community. What we'll be discussing is the value of inventory. I hope I've been able to patch together some understanding of what inventory did for me. The other thing we need to understand and remember is the nature of culture, the nature of it, how it grows, how it needs to be fed, and how important it is to be tended. The focus is on weed, but we have a lot of people that work here, and you're still part of the community. Not only that, Siskiyou County, McLeod, Dunsmuir, Mount Shasta, Wairika, the Shasta Valley, and the Etna and Fort Jones, we are unique in a lot of ways. As far as the rest of the state, we're different. So any leaders that want to get involved in this to understand, to come forward and when I say leaders, I don't mean leaders, I mean people. What we need is we need every aspect of. We need diversity to make something that's really worthwhile. The things things that we can discuss are things like parent-teacher relationship. Parent-teacher relationship, so important. It doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist. Through the people, disenfranchised people, we can make contact. We can influence those people. We can invite them in. But we're going to have to learn how to do it. We don't know how to do it now. But my point is, to do something like this, if we're successful, believe me, everybody's waiting for something to happen that's successful. The 1% isn't part of us because they don't think anything can work at this level. And there's a lot of people that don't want it to work. When we go back to the hate, it's going to be tough to give up hate to come together. But we can do it. We can inspire one another. What we need to do when we come to this meeting on January 20th, 7 o'clock, is to come with our ideas. Leave our agendas at the door. Bring the ideas in, and let's polish them up and make some wonderful things happen. But the main thing is what we want to do is understand that if everybody does a little bit, we can do magical things, wonderful things. But we just can't have a few people doing it because we're just trudging along, and I'm 72. I don't have much more time. Fact. And to be able to pass this on to hopefully another generation, for people to understand, we don't know how to work together, and we learn to work together. Katie barred the door, folks. So here again, I'm Bob Hall, and I hope to see you on January 20th, 7 o'clock, Council Chambers, City of Weed. Thank you.